Namaskar. I welcome all of you for this online CTET program. And let us continue our sessions on human physiology. It is from CTET paper 2 of science. Previously, in the previous session, we had part 1 of physiology where we discussed about circulatory system and s- we discussed about circulatory system and other system. So we will continue with respiration, excretion, and nervous system in this session. So, what are we going to do in this session? So, we will be discussing about the respiratory system, excretory system, nervous system with respect to the most repeated concepts in these three systems and how questions are being asked and what concepts they are touching more. So, this is from entirely from CTT perspective, and at last we'll also see how these concepts can be applied and so that we can solve the questions from previous year questions. So let us go forward, and before that, let us understand on what concepts CTET was focusing more in the previous years so that we can discuss those concepts now and prepare accordingly. So they were focusing more on with respect to excretion, it was nephron. With respect to nervous system, it was reflex action and reflex arc. Then with respect to respiration, respiration in animals, it is breathing and different types of respiratory organs that were discussed, and also aerobic and anaerobic type respirations discussed more. And with respect to anaerobic respiration, it was most favorite in this topic because more questions were being asked from anaerobic respiration. And animal breathing organs are one more concept where we should focus on, and reflex arc we already discussed. So let us move forward and focus on these topics more, these concepts more, because these were there were repeated questions based on this. And let us know the facts and understanding of these concepts, then we'll move forward to solving previous year questions. So first we'll go with the respiration process. Okay, the respiration system. So there are majorly two types of there is in respiration there are two stages, like we can say two parts. One happens externally, okay, external respiration. One more happens in cellular respiration. So external respiration is something that is just breathing, that is physically happening, where exchange of gases takes place between the body and the environment. Then cellular respiration, the respiration that happens internally within the body, within the cells. So cellular respiration is that respiration which happens inside the cells, whereas external respiration is just physical, which is which is just through nose. It is just exchange of gases through nose. So it is gaseous exchange, okay, through alveoli in the lungs, and it is just a physical and mechanical process. It is not the complete respiration process. So the respiration involves both external respiration and cellular respiration. Together it is a respiratory system. Okay, together it is called as respiration. So in cellular respiration, what happens? Energy is produced inside the cell. So glucose that is produced, okay, glucose that is a product of digestion process. And once the bloodstream takes all the absorbed food, it takes to the cell. And once the food or glucose reaches each and every cell, what happens after that is respiration in order to get energy. Okay, that is ATP. So it is this the glucose formula. So glucose will be broken down and energy will be released inside mitochondria. So it is a chemical process. Okay, it is enzyme driven process which happens in the cell. So this is called as cellular respiration, this is external respiration. Together it combinedly does the respiration process. So we'll move forward and see what happens in cellular respiration, okay, with oxygen. There are again two types of respiration. Okay, one is aerobic respiration, the other one is anaerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration is something which involves the oxygen part. Okay, the respiration in which oxygen will be present, that is aerobic, whereas in anaerobic there is no oxygen. Okay, with in the absence of oxygen, if any respiration happens, that is anaerobic respiration. So there are three steps that are involved in the aerobic respiration. So what are these three steps? One is glycolysis, next is Krebs cycle, and the third one is electron transport chain. Okay, so these are the three steps in which the cellular respiration takes place. So what is glycolysis, what is Krebs cycle, and what is electron transport, how it happens, what is the sequence? Like just now we discussed that first is the glycolysis that takes place, next is Krebs cycle, third is electron transport chain. So CTET was asking about the sequence of the steps that happens in aerobic respiration. So we have to remember this sequence and also what happens in each cycle. Along with that, CTT was also focusing on where exactly these processes will be happening. So each step, where exactly glycolysis happens inside the cell, where exactly Krebs cycle happen, and where exactly electron transport chain happens inside the cell. So the location at the site of these steps are also very important. So let us see where it happens. Sequence, we just now discussed the sequence of aerobic respiration, that is cellular respiration. And let us see the site now. So where does it happen? Glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm of a cell. Okay, it happens in the cytoplasm of a cell, whereas the Krebs cycle happens in the mitochondrial matrix. You can see here, it happens in the mitochondrial matrix. And what about electron transport chain? So it happens in inner mitochondrial membrane. Okay, little deeper into the mitochondria, inner mitochondrial membrane. Okay, that is where it happens. This is the last step of aerobic respiration. So in cytoplasm it is glycolysis, Krebs cycle is in mitochondrial matrix, and electron transport chain happens in inner mitochondrial membrane. And what happens in glycolysis? So glucose will divide into two pyruvates. Okay, two ATPs will be released there. Okay, just glucose is converted into two pyruvates. Okay, two ATP is released there. Only a little amount of ATP is produced in through the process of glycolysis, which happens in the cytoplasm. Next, what happens is Krebs cycle. Okay, so what happens in Krebs cycle? So the pyruvates move into mitochondrial matrix. In mitochondrial matrix, what happens is CO2 and H2O are released there. Okay, from pyruvate, CO2 and H2 are released. And next what happens is in the in the process of electron transport chain, most of the ATP is produced in electron transport chain only. So this is where most of the RTP is produced. Almost 38 ATP are produced from a single molecule of glucose. Okay, so from one glucose it is 38 ATP, whereas in glycolysis it will only two ATP, and most of the ATP is produced here. So we all know that mitochondria is a powerhouse of the cell. Okay, aerobic respiration yields most of the aerobic ATP. And aerobic respiration is the respiration where most of the ATP is produced. It is because of the oxygen. It is because of the presence of the oxygen. Okay, so that is how we have to remember. And let us move forward and see without oxygen how respiration is going to happen. This is called as anaerobic. Okay, this is called as anaerobic respiration. So where it happens in muscles, and it happens in yeast in the process of fermentation. So what happens in the respiration? Okay, what happens in anaerobic respiration? Glucose is converted into lactic acid, whereas if you see in the aerobic respiration, in the presence of oxygen, it was converted to complete ATP. Okay, all the ATP, all the glucose is directly converted to ATPs, 38 ATP, whereas here it is converted into lactic acid. Okay, lactic acid builds up in the muscles, and cramps will be formed. Like for example, when we do a intense workout. Okay, when we go for intense workout or continuously doing any physical activity, the oxygen reduces in those muscles or in those cells. So when the oxygen is less, and oxygen becomes less in that aerobic respiration process, that time it will be anaerobic respiration. in the absence of air, oxygen. So so lactic acid will be produced, and due to accumulation of this lactic acid as a result of anaerobic respiration, we'll be getting cramps. Most of us might have already experienced that. And how to remove these cramps and how to remove this lactic acid from the muscle or from the cells? It is through heart bath. So when usually that's how we you know get rid of this lactic acid from the place. And what happens during hot water bath? Our blood vessels dilate. Okay, blood vessels dilate, so that lactic acid flow can be increased, and it will directly it will be moving towards liver, where again lactic acid is converted into glucose. That's why it is the cramps are removed and lactic acid is removed. So in yeast, what happens? So yeast also does anaerobic respiration. Okay, that is called as fermentation. So here what happens? Glucose is converted into ethanol. So through this fermentation process, where yeast is involved, and where anaerobic respiration takes place. So that is the process which is used for preparation of alcohol, like wine, beer, bread, and all. So all these preparations of alcohol involves anaerobic respiration, that is done done with the help of yeast, okay, through the fermentation process. So it is carried out by the yeast only. So there are three different terms which look similar, but we need to know the clear differences between them, because most of the times we might get confused in the exam, because that's how CTET asks questions. When a question is asked, it might give all the options which look similar like this. Okay, fermentation, pasteurization, and sterilization and all. So we should be very familiar with this term so that we don't get confused. Okay, so fermentation is a process where we just now discussed. Okay, it happens in anaerobic respiration, and where yeast, okay, it happens in no, it happens by the yeast. Glucose is converted into ethanol, okay, alcohol. That is fermentation. Pasteurization is a process where milk will be heated and boiled, so that microorganisms in the microorganisms, bacteria, okay, the harmful bacteria in the milk is killed. Okay, that is pasteurization. And sterilization is the same process. It's a process where harmful microorganisms are killed from the things. That is sterilization. So these three differences you should remember. So this is about anaerobic respiration. So where two places it will happens. It happens in the muscles of animal tissue, and it happens in yeast, where glucose will be converted into alcohol. So the process of respiration, inhalation and exhalation. So what happens during inhalation? What happened during exhalation? So all of us know, just remember, because questions were asked on this also. So what happens to our, the size of the ribs or size of the lungs, or what happens to the diaphragm position during inhalation, and what happens during exhalation? So these questions were asked. So we have to remember this. So during inhalation, it is up and outward. Exhalation means down and inward. That's what happens to ribs. What about diaphragm? It moves down and moves up. So these are some easy concepts. Every one of us do remember very easily, but we just thought of just revising because questions were there from this concept. Okay. The most important thing regarding inhalation and exhalation is the composition of inhaled air and composition of exhaled air. So what will be present in inhaled air? So the inhaled air will have 20% of oxygen, and even exhaled air also will have 16.4% of oxygen. Okay, usually we will have misconception that the exhaled air won't have any oxygen. It is completely carbon dioxide. No, even if even though we take oxygen inside, and cells of us utilize that oxygen, when we release air outside, that still consists of 16.4% of oxygen. So inhaled air will have 0.04% of carbon dioxide, whereas exhaled will have 4.4%. So these facts remember, because questions were there from this. And nitrogen, there is no change. Okay, we'll move forward. So questions were also there again from the different organs. Okay, different respiratory organs. We'll have to match with the respiratory organ, the particular organism. For example, there will be, left side there will be organisms, and right side there will be respiratory organs, and we will have to match. Sometimes matching items will be given. Sometimes directly question will be asked to identify the respiratory organ of a fish, or identify the or which is not the respiratory organ of fish or a frog. Such kind of questions were asked previously. So humans, we all know, we already discussed this this concept in previous sessions, but let us just revise. So fishes gills, insects trachea, earthworms it is moist skin, frogs it is skin and lungs both, it is not just one. Okay, so these are the different organs on which the questions were asked. We have to remember them. And toxic clearing toxic nitrogen waste. Okay, clearing. So we are now entering into, so till now we discussed about respiratory system, the organisms and their respiratory organs. We also discussed about aerobic respiration, where aerobic respiration takes place, how it takes place, and we also discussed about anaerobic respiration and the uses of anaerobic respiration and all. So now let us move forward to excretion. Okay, it is, we are moving to excretion. So excretion means excretion, elimination of toxic materials from the body. Okay, that is called as excretion. And in the previous session we discussed that there is a difference between egestion and excretion. So excretion is chemical in nature. Okay, so whatever process that happens in cells, so at the end of all the process, cells release certain waste materials, toxic materials, which need to be eliminated from the body. So this process of elimination of toxic materials or waste materials produced by the cells, okay, produced by the cells or tissues, is called as excretion. Okay, so this we also discuss. Examples are urinating and sweating are two examples of removing waste materials from our body. So how different animals eliminate, okay, how different animals remove their waste materials from their body, what are the different materials, waste materials that they produce, and how they release is the concept here. So there are three types majorly discussed in CTET papers. The questions related to excretion and excretory system were with respect to the kind of excretion that happens, the kind of waste material that will be released by different organisms. Okay, ammoniotalism means it is related to the ammonia. Okay, the waste product that is released is ammonia. It is ureotilism. Okay, it is urea. And uricotilism. Okay, uric acid. So where it happens, which are the animals that they perform this kind of excretion. So ammonia will be released by amoeba, hydra, prawns, most of the fish. So based on the water availability of the water, based on the availability of the water, so that the kind of waste materials will be released. So all these have abundance of water. So these animals will be releasing ammonia. What about urea? Urea will be released by humans, land animals, frogs, but in the form of urine. We'll also see how urea gets converted into urine and it will be eliminated from the body. In birds and reptiles, it is uric acid. Okay, they produce uric acid as waste material which need to be released. So these are the toxic materials. So ammonia is the most toxic material which needs to be eliminated, and which needs lot of water for elimination. Then urea is a little less toxic, so it can be stored for some time, where during urine, before urination, so urine will be stored in the bladder for some time, so it can stay, and it will be released later. The least toxic is the uric acid one. It is a semi solid. Okay, why it will be semi solid? Because lot of water will be reabsorbed by their intestines, and only the solid part will be removed out, because um, in say they, like, birds doesn't get to store water or release water much. And yeah, so this is about different different toxic materials that are produced by different animals, and how they are toxic in nature. So from kidney to outside, so it is especially with respect to humans. Okay, questions will be based on the human excretory system. What all the human respiratory system consists of? There are two kidneys, two ureters, one urinary bladder, and one urethra. So we know the diagram of uh, the excretory system. Okay, so there is a bladder. So two kidneys are there, two ureters are there, one urinary bladder is there, and there is one urethra. So this is it. So it will have, the kidney will have almost million nephrons. Okay, so nephron is a term for the functional filtering unit of a kidney. Okay, it is the more smallest functional unit of kidney is nephron. There is one more term, neuron, so don't get confused with nephron and neuron. Neuron is related to nervous system, whereas nephron is related to the excretory system, that is kidney. Okay, so yeah, the urine's path is kidney, kidney to ureter, then bladder, then urethra. So this is how the path of the urine passes in human beings. So three steps of urine formation. So how urine will be formed and how this urine will be removed from the human body. Okay, so we are talking about human excretory system. There are three steps in which urine is formed. Okay, so every nephron has three different parts where urine, through which urine is created. So one is glomerular filtration, then second one is tubular reabsorption, the third one is tubular secretion. So what happens in tubular, glomerular filtration? It is, so high blood pressure forces glucose, salts, urea into Bloemann's capsule. So there is a structure in nephron called Bloemann's capsule. So all the blood forces all these materials into Bloemann's capsule for ultrafiltration. So from this, what happens? Then it will be moved to tubular reabsorption, where reabsorption of water, glucose, amino acids will takes place in tubular reabsorption. Next comes tubular secretion, where extra water ions and drugs will be secreted, and final urine will be produced inside this kidney, and that will be eliminated from the body. So the key points you should find that glucose and amino acids are completely reabsorbed in a healthy person. So in a healthy person, glucose and amino acids will not be just directly released like that. They'll be completely reabsorbed into the uh, here. Look at tubular reabsorption. Okay, if somebody is diabetic, then their urine will consist of glucose. Okay, little excess glucose will be there. So this is about urine formation in our kidneys. Okay, nephron through nephron. Next, we'll be moving to the nervous system. So I hope you remember what we discussed in excretion. So in excretion, the types of waste material that is produced by different animals. Okay, what are they? Then how toxic they are. Then with respect to kidney, it is kidney structure and the functional unit of kidneys, and how urine is produced in the nephron. Okay, how urine is generated. So this is about formation of urine, which is the waste material that need to be sent out. So brain regions. So we are moving to nervous system now. We are in nervous system. So nervous system. So we know it's for coordination and control of the body through electrochemical signals. So it has two, nervous system has two parts. Okay, one is CNS, one more is PNS. So central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. So these are the two, and the central nervous system consists of the brain part. Okay, the brain till the neck, it is completely the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system lies in our spinal cord. Okay, so let us understand different parts of the brain, because questions were based on to identify the parts of the brain and to identify the missing part of the brain, or the part and the function, or matching the part of the brain with the function of it. So these kind of questions were asked previously. So let us understand, because in future also these kind of questions might come. Okay. So there are majorly three parts. One is forebrain, midbrain, and third one is hindbrain. Okay, so there are three major parts in brain. So forebrain is the largest. Okay, is the midbrain, and hindbrain is divided into three. Okay, so cerebellum, pons varoli, and medulla oblongata. So their functions are given here. We have to remember these functions because question will be asked to match the functions with the part of the brain. Okay, so what does forebrain do? That is cerebrum. Most of thinking process. Okay, thinking, reasoning, memory, voluntary actions, speech, vision. So most of the voluntary actions are controlled by this part of the brain. Okay, then midbrain. What about midbrain? So realization, auditory, and visual reflexes will be happening through midbrain. And hindbrain, you see there are three different parts, and each part has different functions. Cerebellum controls posture, balance, okay, and muscle coordination and all. Whereas pons varili regulates rhythm of breathing. Okay, then middle oblongata, all the involuntary actions which are very very essential for our body's survival or for life. Others are also important, but these are involuntary actions which continuously happen in our body without a stop, like heartbeat, blood pressure, swallowing, all the very vital process that will be happening without our control in our body. So all those are controlled by the medulla oblongata. So especially remember the function of medulla oblongata and which part, which where it stays. It is hindbrain's part. So these are the different parts of brain and their functions. And we also should understand the nerve cell. Okay, neuron. We also discussed about the nephron, that is the functional unit of kidney, but whereas this is neuron, the functional unit of nervous system. Okay, so it has, so the structure of neuron and the different parts of the neuron and the function of neuron also very important with respect to CTET. So these are the different parts that are present in a neuron. So neuron, okay, neuron structure, you can see. So this is the basic structure which every one of us know. Okay, the basic structure I'm drawing, so don't completely go with it. So this is the structure of a neuron. So where, so the dendrites are the the branchy structures at the at the head of the cell. Okay, cyton. This is the cyton. Okay, then axon. The whole this part is axon. Okay, so these are the myelin sheets which are there, are the myelin sheath. Then synapse. So the junction between the dendrites of other neurons and the axon endings, these are called as axon endings. Okay, axon endings. So the junction between, the junction part is called as synapse. So it's a gap between two neurons, signals across using chemical neurotransmitters. So dendrite is a branch-like extension. Okay, it receives the signals. The function of dendrites are, so each part has different functions. So we have to remember that with respect to CTET and their questions. So cyton is a cell body, cytoplasm. It contains all the nucleus and the organelles. Okay, that will be present there. So axon is a fiber that conducts impulse. Okay, from cell body to the axon end. So along the axon, the nerve impulse will be passing and it will be transferred to the next neuron. So myelin sheaths helps in the faster conduction of impulse. Okay, so they act as insulator. They help for insulation of the axon, and they speed up the process of nerve conduction. So these are the different functions of different parts of the neuron. So this is about a neuron, that is structural, the functional unit of the neuron. Okay, that is nervous system. So fast, automatic, and involuntary. So we are talking about the reflex, the response that the response from the nervous system. How many types of responses? Okay, do we have? So we have peripheral nervous system, that is spinal cord, and we have brain, which is also called as central nervous system. So it controls all the actions, fast, automatic. So whatever the reflexes, fast and automatic, okay, without much time, there should be a response. The responses required. Those responses are given by the spinal cord, okay, which is called as reflex arc also. Whereas brain controls voluntary and conscious actions. Okay, conscious actions are controlled by brain. So it has 12 pairs of cranial nerves. It has 31 pairs of cranial nerves. So these facts remember, okay, and so this is slower compared to the spinal cord's reflection, response to the stimuli, external stimuli. And yeah, so these are very important with respect to nervous system. It is about the structure of neuron and the functions of each part of the neuron. Okay, then brain regions and functions of each brain region are very important. So kindly go through this more after the sessions also. And now let us see what kind of questions are asked based on these concepts. So before that, we just see where most of us will be missing out, and will be doing mistakes in CTET. So exhaled air still has O2. So this is where we will have certain misconceptions. So we shouldn't have. So fermentation is equal to pasteurization. We discussed what is the difference between them. So please be careful with the terminology. So though many of the terminologies might look similar, and CTET wantedly gives you the options which are similar in pronunciation and similar in spellings and all. So we should be careful there. Skin must be moist in frogs and earthworms for gases exchange purpose. We discussed that frogs will have lungs, and also they can perform their gases exchange through moist skin. Whereas um, in earthworms it is only the moist skin through which the gases exchange takes place. So reflex arc is related to the spinal cord, where there won't be much time for response. Okay, so it's not the brain. So only glycolysis in cytoplasm. Okay, so where there are three steps, right? Glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and electron transport chain in aerobic respiration. So only glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm of a cell. Rest everything happens in the mitochondria of the cell. So humans are ureotelic because they produce urea, and it will be removed from the body as urine from the kidneys. So now let us see what kind of questions will be asked. Some of the questions that are asked from these concepts in the previous year questions. So let us solve them once. The first question is, the process of converting sugars into alcohols is known as. Okay, the keywords are conversion of sugars into alcohol. So what is this process is called as? Is it pasteurization, sterilization, homogenation, fermentation? Just now we were discussing that studied CTET will give you all the similar looking options to you, similar, the options with, similar pronunciation. Pasteurization, sterilization, homogenation, fermentation and all. So we should be very careful and know the meaning of each term that we are seeing here. So if it is conversion of sugars into alcohol, it is fermentation. Okay, rest of the things are wrong. What about next? We'll move to second question. That is, after physical exercise, we sometimes get muscle cramps. Okay, after physical exercise, we get muscle cramps. It is due to, okay, they're asking reason why sometimes we get muscle cramps while doing intense workouts. Is it because of conversion of pyruvate to alcohol? Is it because of non conversion of glucose into pyruvate? Or is it because of non conversion of glucose into lactic acid? Or it is because of conversion of pyruvate into lactic acid? So we discussed while discussing about anaerobic respiration. Okay, it happens in anaerobic respiration where pyruvate is converted into lactic acid in the presence of in the absence of oxygen. Okay, in anaerobic respiration. So all other three are wrong. It is fourth answer is right. Next, next question. During inhalation, which statement is correct? What happens during the inhalation process? We just discussed. They will ask about what happens during inhalation, what happens to the rib positions, what happens to the lungs expand. Lungs, will they expand? Will they contract? What happens to diaphragm? These questions will be asked. So during inhalation, what happens? Option one, ribs move inward, diaphragm up. Okay, ribs moving inward during inhalation. Okay, so it is wrong because during inhalation our ribs comes out, they expand. Okay, ribs move outward, diaphragm down. Okay, then third one, ribs still. Okay, ribs will be still and diaphragm up. Ribs won't be still because during inhalation on exhalation both there will be change in ribs movement. Then ribs inward, diaphragm down. So the second answer is right. So ribs will be moving out and diaphragm will be going down. That is the answer. Next question. The functional unit of kidney is the, okay, they are asking the functional unit of kidney. Is it alveolus, villus, neuron or nephron? Don't get confused between these two. So it is kidney means it is nephron. Okay, so nephron is the correct answer. That is the functional unit of kidney. So we'll move forward with other questions. Which part of the brain controls posture, balance, and coordination? Okay, which part of the brain controls posture, balance, and coordination? So the keywords are posture, balance, and coordination. Okay, is it cerebellum, medulla oblongata, pons virillis, and cerebellum? So is option 4 because is the one which controls postures, balance, and coordination in us. Next question. Reflex actions are primarily controlled by. Okay, the reflex actions are, remember what are reflex actions? They are immediate reactions without much time. Especially in the danger situations, our body tries to give immediate responses to the stimuli without much timing. Milliseconds time it will respond. That is reflex action. So it is controlled by what? Is it cerebrum, cerebellum, spinal cord, or medulla? Okay, we discuss spinal cord is the one, the peripheral nervous system which will control the involuntary actions. Okay, involuntary actions, whereas cerebrum and medulla are present in the brain. So brain doesn't help in very immediate reactions. Okay, it takes time. Okay, it is slower than spinal cord. So spinal cord is the right answer. So these are a few questions, the type of questions that were asked from the concepts that we discussed, and we'll see a few facts that we shouldn't miss before going to exam with respect to this chapter. Then we'll conclude this session. So some facts that we need to remember are, in aerobic respiration 38 ATP is released. Like for each molecule of glucose, 38 ATP are released. Okay, and there are three different steps that will be there in aerobic respiration. Remember that also. Okay, then cramps is equal to lactic acid. So cramps happen is because of the deposition of lactic acid in the muscles. In which kind of respiration? It is anaerobic respiration. And anaerobic respiration, when it happens, when there is no oxygen. Okay, in the absence of oxygen it takes place. Exhaled air also has oxygen. Okay, exhaled air also has oxygen. So this much of percent of oxygen will be left by all of us in exhalation also. The nephron filters the blood, and that's how urea is filtered, and urine will be removed out of the blood. So nephron is the functional unit of kidney. Cerebellum is equal to balance. Okay, so the balance, coordination, everything is controlled by cerebellum, and reflex arcs is related to the spinal cord. So these are few facts we need to remember before going to exam, because mostly these kind of things will be tested by CTET. So we'll conclude our session here, and this is part 2 of the human physiology, where we discussed about respiration. Okay, we discussed about respiration, we discussed about circulatory system, and we discussed about nervous system. These are the three systems we covered in this session. So in the next session, that is part 3 of the human physiology, we'll be covering few more systems in the next session. So we'll conclude this session. Thank you so much.